This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, PreSonus, API Audio, Isotope, Sound Porter Mastering, JZ Microphones, and Spectra 1964. And you're hearing my voice right now on the JZ BB29 microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX100 mic pre, C610 comp limiter, and Isotope RX and Ozone. So get ready to rock.
The thing I realized is people wanted to be around me and they feed off my energy. People don't pay you just to pay you. They pay you for your taste. They pay you for who you are. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So let me just embrace me, who I am, and share that with the world. And if they love it, they love it. If they don't, well, there's plenty others, but there's none as unique as me.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. I've got two words for you that will help you make your best record ever and not lose it. Storage and backup. You want fast drives for composing and recording and reliable drives for backup so you don't lose all your hard work when something goes wrong. That's why I chose OWC Mercury Extreme Pro 6G internal SSDs for my studio computer and Mercury Elite Pro external drives for archiving. Discover the best OWC drive options for your studio at macsales.com/rockstars. The Spectra 1964 STX100 mic pre provides unequaled headroom and linear output regardless of transient audio peaks, capturing critical details from your microphone. The 100 series amplifiers were used by Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, and the Record Plant on records by ZZ Top, Aerosmith, and John Lennon. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio at Spectra1964.com or call them at 801-797-0642. Studio One from PreSonus is the ideal DAW for your home studio, taking you from songwriting all the way through mixing and mastering with a full suite of virtual instruments, guitar amps, and plugins for creative inspiration. It's easy to use for the beginner, yet fully customizable for your high-speed workflow as you become an expert. Get started now with Studio One Artist and PreSonus Sphere for access to all software learning and creative collaboration at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Patrick Rene, aka Killah Trakz, a Miami native rapper and hip-hop music producer who's worked with artists like Iconz, Rick Ross, Two Live Crew, and Uncle Luke, to name just a few. An analog junkie at heart, adapting in a world of digital, Trakz has been at the forefront of the digital revolution of music distribution by having one of the most downloaded albums in the MySpace Napster era titled Hood's Prodigy. Am I pronouncing that right?
Hood's Prodigy.
Hood's Prodigy. I said it
Yes.
stupid, didn't I? That's great, man. So getting his start in 2007 at a time when the internet was at its peak of popularity for all advocates of music, sites like Acid Planet, UGHH, MP3.com, and hundreds more were gaining more notoriety by the day. Within the first week, Trakz saw his debut album surpass 50,000 downloads easily. An overnight success was an understatement for what would follow. After landing several placements with his production on numerous indie films, Trakz got calls from everybody waiting for his sound. By 2008, his sound was hitting the radio waves, but getting heard by millions through ghost producing many of today's favorite artists. I've met Trakz through our Facebook group at Recording Studio Rockstars, and he just kept posting these incredible tracks that he was producing, these great hip hop songs. And I love the sound of it. And I knew I had to meet him and learn more. So I'm super excited to have Trakz joining us today on the podcast, learn more about his story and see what we can learn about writing, producing, and mixing hip hop in the digital age. So please welcome Patrick Rene, aka Killah Trakz, to Recording Studio Rockstars. Trakz, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm always ready to rock, Lidge. Let's do it.
Dude, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, man. I'm honored. I'm not kidding, man. When I hear the tracks that you were sharing, I just knew that it was the real deal. And I don't really know how to break it down other than I can hear it when I hear it. And so I'm excited by doing the interview to kind of learn more about what that means to break it down and understand what's going on behind the scenes there.
No problem. No problem. Be glad to give a little tidbit of my magic at work here.
Well, let's, if you don't mind, let's start out by just kind of getting a little bit more of a background on who you are. Okay. How'd you get into this recording stuff and you know, bring us kind of quickly to the present and what you're up to these days?
I'm going to make it real honest. I fell into this by mistake. The quick gist of it is I went to someone's home who was recording back in the days. This must have been like in the year 2000 or something. And he had his mixer plugged into the microphone jack. I don't know if you remember like the Sound Blaster sound cards.
Yeah.
He had totally one of those and he had it to the mic jack. And I'm like, no, bro, I think it's supposed to go into the line in. And an argument ensued. And then I ran home and I told my parents, look, I need a DJ mixer, I need a sound card, and I need input cables. And I hooked it into the line in and everything worked. And basically that's just how I fell into this wormhole.
That's a trip. So you started out by wanting to make the beats and make that part of it, or was it like all together? Did you want to be making the beats and rapping on it, or is there no point in even making a difference between the two?
Honestly, I had no interest in music. I really didn't.
You just wanted to figure out how to hook it up.
Exactly, because I've always been like the problem solver. So
yeah, that's kind of me too. I was like, my early studio experiences were basically being the guy with the 4-track who knew how to connect all the crazy adapters together to get this thing into that input, you know, from Radio Shack.
Yep, exactly. Mine was service merchandise.
That's great, man. All right, so then you recorded your first track, and that took off when you did Hood's Prodigy. Tell us about that experience a little bit, because that sounds like a pretty cool story.
Yeah, Hood's Prodigy was actually a personal autobiography of everything to come into fruition to where I'm basically at now as a musician. So it was just like, I just took all my experiences and put it into music. And for some reason, it gravitated to a lot of people. And to this day, I'm still real good friends and maintain relationships with these producers who's actually have gone to, you know, get platinum records and gold records and are doing a lot of work right now.
Nice. And was this one that you recorded through your Sound Blaster card the first time around?
This is one of the records but by then I've kind of upgraded to like, I had like an RME setup by then. So, you know, I was like, I had to step it up. Yeah.
Now, we don't have to get too deep into the weeds of the gear, but have you pretty much used a little bit of everything at this point?
Yes, I did. You know, when they had the Turtle Beach Voyatra cards, I had one of those. And that's basically like what stemmed up, you know, to get to where I'm at.
Nice. And then what's your studio setup like today? Like, what are you, when I'm hearing more recent stuff, what are you using?
Right now, I have all the Apollo X interfaces, the rack mounts, 1176s. I have like 8 of those. Right now, my vocals is going through a SM7B and to a Presonus ADL 700.
Oh, yeah. That's the Presonus sort of tube gear and stuff, right?
Yeah. And then that's going to the audio interface, which is now hijacked from that into my other laptop, which is my production laptop, is running into that through the line in jack, ladies and gentlemen.
Not the mic input.
Not the mic input.
Yeah, you got to get your gain structure right.
Yes, exactly.
Unless your sound is too boring, and then you need to go into the mic input and start making things a little more exciting, right?
Yeah, get the Holy Distortion. Sounds like an album name.
All right, so describe a little bit more, just like, you know, are you sitting in your studio right now? Is it like screen is real close, just a keyboard? I mean, like a computer keyboard and a mouse and a pair of speakers, or do you have like, is your MIDI keyboard front center?
Actually, I program on a machine, Native Instruments Machine Studio. And that's my keyboard because I grew up in the MPC era. So I decided to, still keep that work front.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the MPC and learn more about that. Maybe let's just go right there right now. The MPC has been known as that's like the holy grail of hip hop.
Yes, it is.
Old school. And you were using that for a while. And what makes that the holy grail of hip hop?
I think it's the ease of use and the advancement of, let's say, technology, because, if you remember like the SP1200s, those machines, they were super expensive, but they were limited in RAM storage. So I think when the MPC, if I'm not correct, the 3000s came out, they offered somewhere around 16 megs, if I was correct. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's more a lot of time for producers to do a lot of things. And then when the 2000s came out, that was just like the staple in every studio that I've ever been to.
So it was kind of just like it was the latest advancement in tech that kind of helped.
Right.
But was it also just the fact that you had one box that was kind of handling it and the pads just felt right to play on?
Yeah, the pads just felt right. And then you had multiple inputs and outputs on the MIDI side. So, when the Proteus were like the big thing to use back then, everybody would just MIDI into the Proteus. And I mean, it was basically the MIDI production center, actually, just with sampling capabilities.
Yeah. So, you had already figured out how to do it the right way. But for somebody like me who was always curious all along, I found that I'd get all excited, be like, oh man, this, my new Mac, it's got software in it that'll play samples back and it's great. I got a MIDI keyboard. And then I start going to do stuff. And just like instantly, it's like nothing feels right between the keys and it's not playing back when I'm hitting the key and all that kind of stuff. Is that one of the reasons why having a dedicated interface like the MPC or the machine is so desirable? Just because like you never have to think about that goofiness of hitting the key and hearing it back?
I would also say that, plus also the nostalgic feeling. They always say it's better to be a master of your craft in one thing and learn that in and out before you go ahead and start touching other things.
Yeah. Well, my roommate way back in college, so we're going back to like 92 now, 93, guy named Matt Mahaffey, who's been on the show with us also. He had an Ensoniq 16 Plus or something. It was one of the early samplers.
EPS.
Yeah, man, he just flew on that thing. I was like watching him. It's just like fast button clicks and everything. And it was just like he could just get a sound started and start playing it so quickly. And that was one of the first times I remember seeing that and realizing that the studio tools need to be a lot like your instrument. You need to be able to play it in the same kind of way to be creative quickly.
Exactly. And I had an ASR10 that I learned also, which is like the step up from the EPS 16. And I miss that keyboard. I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, we were using an ASR10 with a band I was producing, a Trixo back then. And we used it for a bunch of stuff, and then we were probably learning it most of the time, And I remember thinking that the effects processing in that was also kind of key. Some of those like crazy short rooms and things were part of the sound. But then that prompted me to get the next level. You talked about like the newest thing comes out. So then out comes the Ensoniq Asr X, and I was like, that's it. That's the one for me. And I like dropped, I don't know, $2,000 in this thing or something like that way, back in late 90s. And it had the pads on it, and it had like the maxed out sample. It 32? Was it 32 megs?
It was 32 megs. Yeah.
32.
Which one you had, the X or the X Pro?
It was the X Pro. So it was like
the red one.
I went for the whole thing. The only thing I didn't have was the multiple extra outputs.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, I played around with it and I figured out some of it, and some things were pretty cool, but I never really got it going. And then I just like the interface, the little screen was so teeny tiny. I could never really get that thing kicking. So
yeah. I mean, and people that are listening to this, they're gonna be like, ASR X Pro.
Right, because that was like, I outed myself by getting that one, right?
Yeah.
Should have just gotten the SR10.
Should have got that one.
So, I think the reason for talking about this too isn't so much to just geek out on model numbers, but to just remind everybody that like picking the right tool is pretty damn important. And it's not always because it's the latest, fastest, greatest, but it's because it works, it's because like you hit that button and you get something plays back for you and you don't have to, and it doesn't trip you up and slow you down when you're trying to be creative,
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about how you're using Machine now, because I've seen that in the studio and I've seen that it does a couple of different things. So for example, it seems like it can be an all-in-one unit. It can also be a MIDI controller to control things in the way I just described that doesn't always work well. And then it can also be like a plug-in on the individual track that's kind of like a hybrid, right?
Right. Yeah. You're right at everything you say. But for me, I use Machine standalone because I think of it as my super duper MPC.
Right.
Yeah. And the fact that Native Instruments has now, created some advances, and now all the VST3s that are coming out right now, or tools. I don't really pay attention to that techie side as much anymore, but you can control most of the parameters from the machine now. So you can dial up, just the patches, and then you can tweak the sounds and everything because it has knobs itself.
Right. So when you're using the machine in standalone mode, it's just literally not connected to a computer at all. You just got headphones plugged into it. And all the sounds live internally on it.
Well, it's not like a standalone machine like an MPC, but I use the software by itself. Like I don't use it as a plug-in or anything. I just use it like if I'm using like a standalone hardware machine.
Okay, so it's a machine in front of you, computer right next to it, and up on the screen is like the machine software, but not Pro Tools.
Right.
Okay,
exactly.
I got you. All right. Okay, dig it. So let me ask you this, man. One of the things that I hear in your tracks that really just knocks me out is picking up on how important it is that the pocket of the way the rhythm goes together is so critical. And that's a thing that like I find I would maybe get stuck on. Like if I sat down, I was like, I'm going to do a beat like what I heard Trakz doing. I might try and play a kick thing and a snare thing and a hi-hat thing. And then you hit the quantize button, and all of a sudden you're like, well, that doesn't feel at all the same. So what's going on with that? Why is it so hard sometimes to figure out what you're supposed to quantize something to? Are we even supposed to quantize it? And how do you describe to us a little bit about what's going on? Because I would describe that, you think you have instruments like kick, snare, and hi-hat, and they don't land at the same time always. Sometimes they're ahead or behind or whatever.
Yeah, I think that just comes with style. It's basically style. I mean, if you go back to a lot of like early records where there were no drum machines and you're listening to the drummer, every drummer had their specific influence on some of the records. So some would hit on bar and some will be a little off just to give it a groove. So I just go by groove and feeling.
Okay, I like the way you're saying that. So it's like a real drummer can put the feeling in. And, when I think about some of the early hip hop records, even think about bands like the Beastie Boys, this is some early drum machine introductions and things are landing pretty exactly together. But I guess some of that depended on which drum machine you used too, right?
Right. Yeah. Some drum machines, their quantized timing was a little loose compared to others.
Right. And that could be real desirable.
Right. Like there's a producer, Jay Dilla, rest in peace. Listening to his production, you'll realize like his drums are a bit off kilter, but it always grooves with the sample of the track. Yeah,
exactly. I totally love that sound. Is there a way like that you describe that? Is there a term for that? Is there a word that describes that kind of pocket versus like totally quantized, or is it like you said, just style?
I think people just call it the Dilla. Like it's just the Dilla. Like, oh, okay, you're going for that Dilla style. All right, we understand.
All right, cool, man. Cool. Do you want to know how I get a consistent sound quality mixing hundreds of episodes of Recording Studio Rockstars? Well, I've been cheating all along by using Isotope RX and Ozone on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, EQ, and limiting on my voice. If you want great consistent mixes too, go to isotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off. Have you ever struggled to finish a mix wondering if it was truly ready for mastering? Wouldn't it be great to have a trusted coach walk you through the final stages of mixing so that you could confidently deliver your mix for professional mastering, knowing that it was just right? At soundporter.com, home of the iterative mastering process, Brian Murphy is your trusted coach to listen to your needs and help you get your mix ready for mastering. Contact Brian now for a free mix review and mastering demo at soundporter.com. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So like when you're programming, let me see, Old Time's Sake, for example, that's got a beautiful example of really laying back the chorus vocals and stuff too. And then also the kick and snare, like the hi-hat seems like it's laid way back against the kick and snare.
Right.
And like, how would you describe the way all those beats are falling?
So that record right there is actually produced by my little brother. His name is Eloquent. And he has that J Dilla influence. So, you know, when I'm listening to some of his records and things of that nature, and when I get the stems back and I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and put a little filling. Sometimes I'll make those little adjustments here and there. But for the most part, I mean, he already has it programmed on his mind. So there's really not much that I have to do when I get those kind of records.
All right, cool. What kind of tools would he use for his programming?
He's a FL Studio user.
All right, so is that one where you're just plugging in a MIDI controller, some kind of drum beat pad?
Yep, MIDI controller, and he just goes about his way. Or, sometimes we'll program just with a mouse and click in the pad, and there's a quantized little button right above it that you can, shift left or right, and you'll notice, the patterns start to shift a little bit.
Oh, okay, so FL Studio will quantize something, but you can make it ahead of the beat or behind the beat too?
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's badass. I didn't even know that. Does anybody else, as far as a DAW goes, have that kind of feature built into it?
I think all of them do it, but everybody's different. I think they go by percentages. I know Logic back in the days, you can actually download quantized templates and you can, put the templates on, and then you'll notice that it starts doing the shifting.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes you'd have like quantized templates and it would say MPC,
right,
50% or whatever.
Right, exactly. So everything is really on the percentages of the quantized. Yep.
All right. So I guess another question about that is if you're feeling the beat and you're playing it in and then you don't know where you're supposed to quantize things to, what should you do? What advice do you have somebody who's just trying to figure this out for the first time?
I would tell them to just use YouTube as a reference, pull up a artist or a producer that inspires them, and just really pay attention to the layering of, what's going on, and then you try to mimic it.
Yeah, I guess if you feel like you played it in kind of close, but it's just not quite quantized right, would the YouTube would still be a good resource as far as figuring out like what kind of quantized setting you're supposed to use, like whether it was that MPC 50 or something.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, YouTube now is basically like the new library, the new thesaurus, the tutorial hub. So there's somebody that started off just like whoever's trying to learn. Even I go there every day, to pick up on a few little techniques here and there. So there's somebody, if you go, to the right search, somebody's going to show you, exactly how to adjust, what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, so when you're in Machine and you want the kicks to be more ahead of the beat and the snares to be more laid back, where do you go reach for something to make that shift?
There's actually there's a function, because the Machine works like its own hardware tool. There are shortcuts on the Machine that you can press, and then you can actually, groove the quantize as you feel. And that's on a per pad basis.
I see. So you might actually be like clicking into place. Or let me ask you this. How often would you play it on the pad first with that beat and that groove versus just like place the beats where they are and then just start shifting the quantize to move it ahead or behind?
Well, I'll say this. The machine is not the MPC. I don't know what it is about the magic of the MPC where you don't even have to turn on the quantize. And as you play, as you groove, it'll play back like that. I guess because it's something with the time, I think it's called PPQ timing. Don't quote me, but that itself had a lot to do with it compared to, a machine being something that's computer. So it doesn't have like a humanized function where, everything you play is going to play like bars and beats. It's just going to click.
You're making me think of something my dad used to say, though. He would have called it PDQ, pretty darn quick quantizing. He was old school.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so, like I said, on the machine, I mean, you will program it, but it's just some weird thing that it does where it kind of like makes you scratch your head. And then you would have to go back and play it and then go back on the grid and shift things manually compared to like some with a MPC where you just play it as is. And usually the time comes out exactly how you feel. All
right. So that's a really good tip, I think, for anybody who's looking for that. Anybody who wants to just be able to play it and not think about it. Maybe the MPC is still a good way to go for that.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it.
How many people are you close to that are still producing on an MPC these days? And
ooh, man, it's a nice little circle, but they're a niche group. Yeah.
It's probably a little bit limiting, right? Compared to some of the stuff you can do really easily on a computer.
Right. Like, everybody's now more like towards the Ableton thing. So, the guys that I know that's using hardware, it's like they started with it. And, they fall into that whole like hardware thing. So,
Yeah. And then if somebody is producing on a MPC, are they only programming like kick, snare, and hi-hat on there, and then everything else, all the other loops are probably happening back in the computer afterwards? Or you think they might just do everything?
No, because I get to hang out and do some work with those guys. No, they're doing everything in the MPC. Like even like they'll play like a soft synth on computer and they'll resample it back into the MPC so everything could be contained.
Wow. And then what about the mixing process? How does that do you just kind of spit out a 2-track and that's your mix that goes into the computer for cutting vocals?
There's two ways to it. With the older hardware, they had the 8 outs. So we will just jack all 8 outs, like tracking out a band. And then the newer MPCs, it can actually do multi-tracks outputs, bounces. And then those we could just load into whatever DAW at the time we're using and get to work with the individual track outs.
All right, cool. Let me go back a notch here and ask you a question I like to ask guests a lot of times on the show, to share an inspirational quote or to tell us about somebody that really inspires you as far as a producer. Is there anything you want to share with us?
The inspirational quote. Can we curse on here?
Absolutely.
All right. The best inspirational quote I ever received was "Shit happens."
Yeah.
That was it.
And what was the context when you got the quote?
I think we were working on a record and something happened where one of the hard drives crashed and we were all looking around at each other and he just looked like shit happens.
Yeah.
And, it was like, okay.
I'm with you on that. I remember early on, hitting the studio and you feel like if something doesn't go right, you just feel like it was the biggest problem in the world. And then you hear a story about somebody who's experienced somebody kind of at that mentor level. And I remember hearing stories about people who'd be like, yeah, that, so-and-so, one thing about them is they just never seemed fazed in the studio when things didn't go right. They just like breezed through it or something. And I think that's what you're talking about too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to accept it for what it is sometimes. Not every day is going to be rainbows and unicorns. You're going to have those dark cloud days. It's just how do you, get out of that situation when it presents itself.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if there were rainbows and unicorns in the studio while I was working, that might freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of drugs those are.
All right. So what about now? Like, who is somebody that's really inspiring you now? What have you been listening to lately? Or what producer has been turning you on as far as their stuff they're doing?
What I've been actually doing is going back into like a musical time machine. I've been listening to a lot of Dark Side of the Moon.
Nice.
I've been listening to a lot of Bob Marley Legends album, Fleetwood Mac. The thing is, I listen to those records to learn about sonic space.
Yeah.
You know, how these engineers created space, and they had honestly less technology than we have now, but how were they able to achieve and mold and create those sounds without such, overpacked production, but still get, that sonic quality out of it?
Yeah. So what are some things that, when you heard that, what are some ways that you started practicing that on your own productions?
Less is more.
Yeah, just leave more space in there.
Yeah, leave more space on the record. And especially with rap nowadays tend to be a lot of vocal tracking. I kind of say, hey, if you can't do it with your lead vocal, if you can't convey what you need to convey with that one lead vocal, then let's go back and rewrite. Let's rewrite the lyrics, or let's find a way where we can find a cadence to make that lead vocal stand out. That way, it can be pushed up front, but you still have the production behind you to lead the way.
I'm looking for my question that I know I wrote down, but I can't find it in front of me. But I wanted to ask you that. So I wanted to ask you about some of the clever ways or useful ways. Clever might be the wrong word, but useful ways to treat the vocals in a rap mix or production. Sometimes you've got the leads, sometimes you've got choruses, sometimes you've got ad libs, and I'm going to be at a loss for word for what other terminology there might be for it.
No. I mean, you're going in the right direction. For me, I think it's all genre specific. I mean, you have trap, you have your hip hop, your backpack music, but as far as treating vocals, I mean, it's the same thing. I always say, make sure that lead captures the emotion that you want, because that's actually what's going to carry the record.
Right. So that main vocal has got to tell the story.
Yeah, that main vocal has to tell the story. And then everything else, I mean, will go along as we're doing the record.
Now, let me ask you this. So we got a YouTube playlist that we put together, and Rockstars, you'll find that in the show notes. Old Time's Sake, Fallen Star, Get Up and Hustle, The Menu. Is this all your voice that we're hearing on all these tracks?
Those are my all those are my voice.
All right, great. You sound great, dude. I love it, man. I love your style and flow. And it's just very relaxed, man. And I'll go back and hit you with this question again. So I was saying on Old Time's Sake, for example, the super laid back chorus vocals. How do you describe that? What is that? Because I mean, like, I hear that and it's a trip to me. It's like, it's not trying to have everything land perfectly in a beat. It's trying to like have it. It's almost like it's laid back and it totally relates to the beat, but it's important that it's like way behind it,
Well, yeah, it's all on style. It's all on style. And some people, they can tell you that music speaks to them in a different way, so they could just follow the flow of the music. Yeah. It's not being ahead of the music. It's not being behind of the music. You just follow it. And, you create the timing. You create the timing as you're, making the record and producing the record.
Yeah. And I guess if you just create it and you believe in it and you own it, it becomes the new timing.
Right. Exactly.
Do you ever notice that sometimes the way to do it is you're laying back so much that it's almost like it flips around and catches back up with the beat a bar later?
Yes, sometimes that does happen. So that's why I said it's all about how you construct the lyrics. Sometimes you can have too many words in a bar. So you'll have to just say, okay, let me pluck this word out. Let me pluck this word out. Okay, it may not sound like proper English, but it'll fit in the transition really smoothly.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that jumps me to another question, which is, when it comes to lyric, how do you write lyrics? I mean, are you a pen to paper kind of guy? Is it all up in your head, or do you just record it and play it back?
I'm really fast with typing on the Notes app on the iPhone.
Really, man, I suck at typing on the Notes app on the iPhone.
Yeah, I don't know where the fingers thing came from, but I just picked it up, and it's quick. It's quick because I can always go back and edit. And now, as we're releasing music in the digital age, it's easy for me to just copy and paste that and put it in the lyrics section. So when the record is released, the lyrics can also already be there without me having to format and do all this other stuff.
Yeah. Now I've done a lot of spoken word production and recording in schools. And then sometimes I'm teaching music production and somebody's on a mic. And I've noticed that like kids just like almost universally show up with a phone. If it's leaning towards hip hop, people show up with a phone and the lyrics are just written on the phone. And it seems like that is a really common way to do it.
I mean, you got to use the advantage of the technology that's there.
Yeah. Yeah. API Audio has been designing mic pre's, compressors, and EQs for more than 50 years. Every product they make includes founder Saul Walker's original proprietary op amps and transformer designs to make sure you always get that legendary API sound in your studio. Whether you are writing songs for fun or mixing Grammy-winning hits, API has got you covered with individual modules, rack units, and dedicated consoles to make sure your next record is your very best. Go to APIaudio.com. Sometimes you just need a mic that will stand out in a mix. That's when you need the new BB29 Signature Series from JZ Microphones. The unique single diaphragm golden drop capsule gives the BB29 airy highs and smooth mid-range to help your tracks stand at the front of your mix. JZ's handcrafted, fully discreet microphones come with a 5-year warranty and free shipping to the US. You're hearing my voice on the BB29 right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. Where do songs come from for you? I mean, when you're writing about things, what thoughts do you want to share about, how you arrive at what you want to say about something and how you dial that into, being a lyric you love?
Honestly, it's a celestial thing that happens. Like I'll listen to the record and the record speaks for itself. So
meaning you've got the music produced already and there's no lyrics on it. And you just listen to that and feel it.
I listen to it and the music guides me to write what I need to write.
How often is it the other way around?
Barely. It's just something that I guess it just came to me as is.
Okay. All right. So then where does the music come from? Is it music that you're creating first, or is it music somebody else is creating? And is it more often to collaborate with somebody else who's making the track?
It's all three ways, honestly speaking. It's all three ways, but it's just like you listen to it, unless somebody already says, hey, this is the direction we're going to go and things of that nature. But if it's just me working on something or somebody pitching me something, I just listen to the record. I actually mute out the drums. I don't want to hear no drums, no bass, no elements. Let me focus on the main instrument, whether that's a sample or a string set or a horn section. But let me hear it and see where this record is going.
That's
and
interesting.
then from there, I'll go ahead and just layer the vocals as it needs be.
So you're listening to the loop with the vocals, and then you might not listen to the kick and snare and the hi-hat until you've already recorded some stuff?
Right, exactly.
Wow, that's a trip. Does that actually help it have that quality of not trying too hard to line up together?
Yeah, it does, because it's all based on the production, because sometimes some records can be a loop, like you say, but then there's those records that build up with time.
Yeah.
So, let's say you take your best rock record, remove all the drums, but just listening to the guitars and how, certain times there's a crescendo, there's that peak, there's that arch in the record, and you listen to the vocals and you notice that everybody is following that arch of the record. And when that drop off comes, the vocals get softer, it gets lower. It's kind of like I followed that trajectory as far as when it comes to music making.
Okay, cool, man. All right, I like it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I had some other question in my head, but I already lost it. I'm getting entranced by this whole discussion, which is great.
Thank you. Thank
Oh, I know what I was going to say. When I'm asking you these kind of, like mildly dumb questions about the timing of things, you got to understand that I'm a banjo player.
Right.
So I'm like all about like, got to get those notes to line up on the beat,
Right.
So to me, it's really fascinating to think about the different ways of coming up with these grooves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to listen to your tracks too and realize that like, okay, on this song, the hi-hat's laid back and maybe the kicks early, but the snares late, or something like that. And then on this one, maybe the hi-hat's, early. I don't know. Is the hi-hat ever early or is the hi-hat always
Yeah, there's certain records. The hi-hats are more late than early.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then what would you say about kicks and snares? Is there any kind of general?
It's all on feel. Everything we do is with feel. It's just all at the feeling. Sometimes you want to hit the pocket. Sometimes you don't want to hit the pocket. Sometimes you want to be a little bit ahead of a pocket, depending on how, the song structure is.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned 3 different styles. You brought up trap, hip hop, and backpack.
Mm-hmm.
What are those?
Trap is basically what the millennials are.
Yeah.
The millennials and the younger generation. I mean, I say it like this. It's basically synthy production. It's basically synth production with 808s and hard drums.
Yeah, it's like
that's
long,
what I look at.
Long bass, short, quick hi-hats, right?
Yes. Yep. I mean, very rapid fire hi-hats. Then the hip hop music are more of your mainstream records. And then the backpack music for me feels to be more experimental, far as those guys who really take the time to sample and, probably do more than meets the eye. Records that'll probably be 7 minutes long compared to like mainstream hip hop where they're meeting radio demands at 3 minutes and 15 or 3 minutes at 30.
Right. And where does the term like backpack come from? Does that refer to carrying your records around in a backpack or something?
Well, that I guess is just that the hip hop lifestyle, and it was more like music that was it was more lyrical. You was listening to the songs that were lyrical. So
okay,
I guess that's where the backpack terminology came from. But don't quote me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think of a backpack. I think about, being in a urban setting and you're riding the bus to get somewhere or whatever,
Exactly.
You got to have a backpack. Otherwise you can't carry your shit with you.
Hope it's a sturdy one too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then, when I think about trap music, I feel like maybe maybe it's more appropriate to be exactly on the quantized beat for some of that stuff,
Yeah, most definitely. But I can say this though. I've had trap records that I've had a chance to mix where we actually shifted the quantize a lot on the 808 programming. So sometimes we'll make them a little late just to catch the groove of that first kick that comes back in.
Okay, so when you say first kick, you mean the 808 is the first kick, or do you have an 808 plus a punchy kick?
808 plus a punchy kick.
All right.
Right.
All right, dig it. What about talking about like old school hip hop versus, well, first of all, let me ask another dumb question. What's the difference between rap and hip hop?
You're asking the wrong guy. I've been trying to figure that out for many years.
Is that just a dumb question? Because hip hop is the music and rap is the lyric.
I think hip hop is a lifestyle, and rap just happens to be one of the. I'm trying to find the word for it, but just one of the umbrellas under the hip hop terminology.
Okay, dig it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that Netflix documentary, The Evolution of Hip Hop?
No, I have not. I have not caught that.
It's great. I almost said Killah, but that's you. It's fantastic, man.
I didn't see that one.
I really enjoyed it. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I've been watching some of it. So Rockstars, if you want to catch up on some of that and just kind of get a breakdown of the history of it, that's a great resource right there. All right, let's talk about old school versus new school. And is there anything going on there that you think like that we're at risk of losing something that's special about music? Or is it more, do you see more of just a natural evolution? Like what the kids are doing is great because the kids like it.
I say that with each evolution, we have to accept it for what it was. What our parents listened to, we would listen to it and be like, eh. Then when we would, then we had our own children, then it's just like, they're like, but no matter what, if you go back as we age and we go back and listen to it, you'll say, it's not as bad as I thought it was, you know? Okay, I can relate with, certain things that they were saying or the things that were happening.
Yeah, you're a dad as well, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So I've noticed that my daughter, my kid will introduce me to music that I was never, ever going to like before. Like there was no way I was going to be liking musicals back in the day, dude. Mm-hmm. But now I could listen to Annie with you and just be like, this is one of the most incredible things I've ever heard, My daughter's the same way. Yeah, she introduces me to a lot of things and I can't be like old man dad and be like, oh, turn this off. I'll be like, okay, let me give it a chance. Let it grow on me. Let me listen. And then I say, okay, that'll pass. I won't listen to it like if it comes on the radio, I might skip it, but I say, okay, I understand where they're coming from. I understand the context of the record. All right, not a problem. Yeah, and I find that I really enjoy, as record makers, I really enjoy having an appreciation for the sound of a certain style of music because I get curious. Like I'm like, ooh, I want to try seeing if I can get that sound.
That is one of my favorite things. I love when you brought that up because believe it or not, as hip hop or rap eccentric as I am, Britney Spears' Toxic record, till this day, still drives me insane when I listen to that record. Because I always ask myself, what were they thinking when they were producing this record? Because there was so much going on, but I love every second of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of excited about discovering bass music now. We came up in a time, actually, this spins me to a question about hip hop too, but we came up in a time where you couldn't put bass on your recording in the same way that you can today. And partly that's just because everything's digital now and there's actually a way to deliver the bass and actually hear it back, whereas there maybe wasn't in the past. But I have noticed, and I don't know if you've heard me say this before on the show here, but I've noticed if you go into, Apple Music or one of these Spotify's or whatever, and you just say, old school hip hop, and then you just say, and then you just search hip hop, you get a completely different sound of bass and low end. It's almost like it's shifted down an octave in modern production.
Right. It did. And I think, wasn't that because of the way vinyl reproduced bass as they were cutting it back then? That too much bass would like destroy the vinyl placard or something like that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it would have just caused the needle to skip right out of the
Right, exactly.
Or your grooves would have had to be too wide. But I guess a fair question is, because I think we have to remember too, that the music and the styles have everything to do with the way that they're delivered too. We should never forget that. Like music that gets listened to on iPod headphones is going to be produced for iPod headphones. Music that's meant to be listened to in huge EDM outdoor festivals is going to be produced with that in mind. And, the kind of upper bass of old school hip hop played off a vinyl record. I wonder if those were designed to be played back on systems where you then like reboosted the lower bass in those clubs too.
Well, one thing that I know that I can share is that there are multiple mixes and multiple masters done. So there's usually, I don't know if you remember back in the vinyl days, they would say club mix, stadium mix, things of those natures, and they mix just for those forums.
That's interesting. I always thought of the DJ mix as the one that was super extended, so you can mix in and out on two records. Two turntables.
Well, what I've learned about like clubs and things of that nature, you don't want too much of the bass because it can start distorting really, really bad. And not every venue is set up with the right, front end also.
Now, how much experience do you have now hearing the music that you're producing or other people are producing in club settings? And how does that inform the music that you're producing now or the mixes that you're creating?
It has a huge proponent because being in South Florida, the club scenes are like the new hangout spots. Mm-hmm. So, when I'm in there and I'm
maybe
listening,
not literally today.
Well, not right now, thanks to the corona, but yeah, I really listen to it and I do pay attention a lot to the 808s. And, I actually see where the frequencies where DJs really like to crank the records. Like a lot of people don't listen to that, but I really do. I have to. It's like a must.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're getting a sense of how the DJ is going to spin back the track that you're creating so that you can try and dial it in appropriately for the mix.
Exactly.
Do you ever get frustrated by how slow that feedback loop is though?
No, I actually don't. Because it is what it is. Honestly speaking, it is what it is. But as I said, some front ends are different from other venues. Some venues have proper systems and some venues have not so great equipment, but you have to find that balance in between it.
Right. You can't always know, club doesn't equal just one answer, in other words.
Right. Exactly.
It's a whole variety of stuff.
It's a whole variety. Mm-hmm.
Well, very cool. All right. Well, let's take a break for just a second. We'll be right back for the jam session. Rockstar's reminder that we got links to what we're talking about here with Trakz in the show notes. So go listen to his songs, which are Killah, and you're going to love them. We'll see you guys in just a moment for the jam session. During the height of record making, the Spectre 1964 100 series preamp was the perfect choice to build consoles for Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, Ardent Studios, and New York City Record Plant, bringing you the sound of ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, King Crimson, John Lennon, and many more. The 100 series amplifiers offer extremely stable, high-speed circuit design with unequaled headroom, low noise, and linear output, irrespective of transient audio peaks, giving you cleaner, punchier, dynamic recordings. The Spectre 1964 legacy is carried on today through Bill Cheney and Jim Romney. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio with the STX Mic Breeze, BBDI, and comp limiters. Go to Spectre1964.com or call 801-797-0642. You're hearing my voice right now on the JZ BB29 microphone, the Spectre 1964 STX 100, and C610 comp limiter. A gold bar should be kept safe in a vault because it's valuable, but it could be replaced if it was ever lost. One of your songs or recordings, on the other hand, is worth more than gold because it's one of a kind. It's you, and if it was ever lost, it could never be replaced. So wouldn't you feel better knowing your music was safe? This is why I like to have a dedicated system drive, audio work drive, virtual instrument storage drive, cloud storage, and an extra large backup drive in my studio computer. And when I'm finished with the project, I move it onto a dedicated pair of external drives for archiving. Thanks to OWC, I can count on my drives being super fast, reliable, and secure so that I can work quickly and sleep soundly at night knowing my music is safe. I want your music to be safe too. Discover the best options for storage and backup for your studio from OWC at macsales.com/rockstars. Have you ever wished you could remove the click-track bleed from a singer's vocal mic, the sound of shuffling feet from a full choir, or clicking noises from the valves of an otherwise brilliant trumpet solo? These are just some of the incredible things I've been able to clean up, edit, or remove from a recording using the magic of Isotope RX. Great for mixing with a collection of plugins for your DAW to manage plosives, clicks, S's, noise, buzz, reverb, breaths, and even guitar fret squeaks with the set-it-and-forget-it simplicity that lets you focus on your creativity in the studio while you let Isotope handle the audio challenges. If you've ever wanted to truly feel like a magician in the studio, then Isotope RX is your magic wand. Go to isotope.com/rockstars in the show notes and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off your first purchase. Hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Patrick Rene, aka Killah Trakz, joining us from Are you joining us from Miami right now, or are you
I am in sunny Miami, Florida.
Ooh, I like Miami. I haven't been there in a minute, but I got family down in Miami, and my daughter and I love to go there for spring break when we can.
Yep.
So Trakz, I'm psyched to have you here on the show. I don't know if you can tell by my tone of voice and everything, but for me, it's like I'm super, super enthusiastic, and I love the music you're producing and making. But I also feel like a kindergartner trying to ask questions about it. I feel a little bit like, you've let me into the clubhouse. So I just want to say thank you for doing that.
No problem. It's a pleasure for even having me on here.
Yeah, man. All right. So let's keep moving forward. One of the tracks that you shared with us is Get Up and Hustle, which I think is a recent one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So what would you call a fast tempo production like that? Or what stories you want to tell about making that song? Where does the story come from? Where does the production come from?
I'll make that quick. This record was produced by DJ Grumble. And if you Google that kid, he's produced for like J. Cole's artists and many major records. And we started our relationship back when we were younger. And the way that record came about is, he presented the record to me. And, like I said, I listened to the record and I'm just like, you know what? This record is very inspiring because I just lost my mom recently.
Oh,
wow. And my mom was always a person who was getting up to figure out the next plan. She was my hustler. So seeing how she conducted business and how she handled what she had to handle, I picked up a lot of those things from her. And I said, you know what? This will be a tribute and ode to my mother. So let me take what I've learned, the things that she taught me, and then mash it together and create that record.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. I got a lot of respect for that. There are times where, I've lost both my parents, and there are many times where I've felt like, Lidge, you really need to create something for them. But I like to think that this whole podcast and everything we're doing here is
right.
One way to honor both my parents,
Exactly. It's something in their memory. At least they could say, you know what? I'm proud that you're doing something that, can fulfill more than a community,
Yeah. All right. Well, let me try and look for tough questions to ask you about that. So,
okay.
When you're trying to write something meaningful like that, you've got a topic, a theme. Where are the places where you still beat yourself up about a word choice and you're like, I can't say that, that's stupid? Or what are the ways that you get past that and don't let that kind of self-criticism get in the way?
That's a great question. I try not to do ands and I's a lot.
You mean just like the in-betweens?
Those words, the in-betweens, the words and I. Like I really try so hard not to say and, because it starts sounding narcissistic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then I, meaning like, like I got up and brushed my hair this morning. Would you just say brush my hair this morning? Exactly. Or would you just not even do an I sentence at all?
I try my best not to do the I.
All right. So it's, it's funny. You go to therapy and they'll be like, it's a you statement. You got to make an I statement. But if you're writing lyrics, you're like, you got to make a you statement, not an I statement.
Exactly.
All right. So rap is the opposite of therapy. I see what I'm saying now. Just kidding. Okay, cool. So then, so you're looking for things that bother you sort of conceptually. You said it's sort of narcissistic to add those things. Are there also ways that you find you're like, dude, you're killing the groove by trying to put in too many words? I think you were bringing that up earlier.
Yeah, too many words. Too many words can really kill a feeling of a record. Chop them off.
All right. So what are some common words or places that you see that creep in a lot, or maybe with other rappers where you're trying to give some advice, places where you're like, you can drop this word a lot, you can drop that, turn around a lot. Anything that comes to mind?
Like a lot of the, especially with like the cadence and following tempo, like, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes you could fit and 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're trying to find that groove. But sometimes the words just run on and then you run out of breath. Yep. And I'm like, you see right there where you ran out of breath? Within that sentence structure, you can remove a word or two. Or you can actually replace the word period, and then it'll flow easier and you'll have the pocket for your breath.
Yeah, that goes for just song lyrics too. I mean, there are songs sometimes I'll do that. I'll put way too many lyrics in there because I'm all excited. I'm all proud of myself that I made them fit rhythmically. Remember I mentioned I'm a banjo player?
Mm-hmm.
But then later I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So I think that's a great tip. And I think it's a great reminder that like when we're producing a record in the studio for somebody else, even if, if we're a hip hop producer who doesn't usually produce a songwriter, or we're a songwriter producer that doesn't usually produce hip hop, we can still give useful feedback to somebody who's on a mic by noticing things like that. That's why you're running out of breath, because it's just you're putting too much in there all at once.
Too many.
Okay, cool. Here's another one. This one is actually not lyrical, but this is going back to producing the tracks. Mm-hmm. So I noticed on some of your stuff, you got this groove going, and when the snare hits, I hear like a loud hi-hat or a loud tambourine or something kind of jump out along with the snare. What makes something like that happen? Is that just because it happened to be on the original sample that was grabbed and that's also turned way up? Is that an intentional thing, or is it just comes out that way? The compression. Just the compression sort of is highlighting those things?
Yeah. Especially because, with the SSL compressor, it can pump. So it's the pumping of the compressor. So when it gets when it gets to a certain threshold, everything just opens back up and it's like a vacuum. And then next thing you know, it just sucks right back down and everything is groovy.
And are we also describing that the snare sample was already blended in with the hi-hat? And so it's all one sound?
Right. Exactly. Uh-huh.
All right, cool. I'm running out of questions fast, man. You're just knocking them out of the park here. Live band.
Live band, yeah.
You ever play with a live band? And
I have.
Do you feel like hip hop can be done well with an actual real band as opposed to just loops?
Of course. Because with a live band, you're going with emotions and you're going with feelings. And let me say this, recording a live band is probably one of the most awesome feats that I've ever had the pleasure of doing.
Okay, what was the situation, or is it many situations that you've done that?
There's several situations, but to break it down in context, we're working on a record, and I was stuck in that, should we do it live? Should we do it in the box? Should we do it this way? And then, I met up with the group of guys and, just listening to them groove, and I was like, stay right there. Do not change that. Let me press the record button, and just everyone playing together, and they're doing their thing, and it's like I'm there basically conducting like bass, and then the bass is doing their thing, and I'm like keyboard, and they start doing their thing. Like that was one of the coolest feelings ever.
Yeah. Do you know the album Heavy Rhyme, Brand New Heavies?
Yes, I do.
People are probably sick of me bringing that up on the podcast. It's just one that I know that I love the sound of so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how that one was put together with just great rap styles and the live band. And I think some of it was performed where things are coming out. And then a lot of it is also just, DJ style muting stuff at the console.
Right.
Afterwards, Do you have any desire to do more of that stuff?
Yes, I do. Every day. This is why I actually expanded my equipment foray here to try to get more live instrumentation.
How would you do that? If you could have the ideal setup right now for doing a production where you're rapping along with the live band, what would you set up?
Right now I have I have at least 40 inputs of I/O right now. I have a bunch of 1176s. I would just need a few more mics and just plug it in and we can go.
So you'd have the band in the studio. And where would you be? Would you stay in the control room right in front of the Pro Tools?
No, I would be in the booth. I would be in the booth with them.
You know what? That was unfair of me. I just said Pro Tools. Are you even? I don't think I asked you if you're using Pro Tools.
I use every DAW. It all depends on what clients send when I'm working with clients. But me personally, yes. I mean, I am using Pro Tools.
All right. Well, let me ask you about Studio One. Have you used that one yet?
I use Studio One also.
All right. What I'm new to it and I'm learning it more, and they've also been a generous podcast sponsor as well. So let's give them a moment. What are some things about Studio One that you have found to be pretty great ideas? Okay, so Studio One to me is a mashup of Logic, Cubase, and Pro Tools all put in one. Yeah. And what I like about it is that the fact that the interface is easy to use. I like the way some of the editing and some of the plugins and how some of those things are added. I love their mix effects engine where it actually works like a console. If we're going to geek out now, I like that crosstalk. They have a plugin that introduces crosstalk, so it'll feed into different mixer channels, and you'll get a little chatter here and there. It's pretty quick, and I like that it lets you define shortcuts also. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so you do that. You'll sort of program your own shortcuts for things. Right, I program. I follow the Pro Tools template for most things, but then there's other little things that I'll just add on to myself. All right, anything you want to share specifically? I can't think off the top of my head right now. Okay. I'm going to just sample that vocal note you just did and build a track off that, man. Yeah, but I'll be honest with you. If not to get on specifics, but if Avid don't get it together, I might have to go Studio One. Yeah, I'm exploring that. I'm sort of like preparing for the apocalypse there myself. And I have the Studio Live mixer right next to me right now. Oh, cool. And I'm practicing seeing how that's going to interface with Studio One. And I'm just pretty excited about it, actually. So you've upgraded to version 5? No, I'm about to. You're talking about Studio One. Yeah, I'm about to. Yeah, so I have version 4 still. And I'll be honest with you, thank you for Sonus for even providing me with Studio One, because I was doing some contests a couple of years ago, and they were one of my sponsors also. So thank you, Personas. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I like this thing about the company. I saw them. I've known them since way back, 20 years ago when or maybe not quite 20 years ago, but close to it, when my brother got his first thing, and it was the Fire Studio 8 or whatever it was. Studio, yep. Yeah, it was like an 8-out light pipe, and it had 8 mic pre's, and you're like, hey, that was really affordable, and it sounds pretty cool. Yep. And then they've evolved. But one of the things that I not to make this a giant Presonus ad right now, but one of the things I think is cool about them is I've seen them say, we're going to try some new things. We're going to create a workstation, software. We're going to get into hardware that connects with it. And it was almost like this promise of how it was all go together. And now I'm seeing it actually all go together. It's like they're creating a whole environment for the studio where you can do cool things like have a mixer right in front of you, control the DAW, or control the mic pre's from within the DAW, which is a great thing. So you're out at the drums and you're playing and your levels are too hot. Well, you can just reach over and adjust the mic pre right there. Yep. And get that right. And then also the AVB network with the Ethernets. Yep. That's cool, man. I mean, you could if you wanted to set up a home studio now, back in the day, you'd be thinking well, how am I going to see from the control room to somewhere else? And how are we going to run mic lines through the house to another room? Now you could take a house that maybe has Ethernet jacks in it, and you could just plug an Ethernet cable in the wall and then plug it into another one. And you got a whole thing right in front of the drums, which is like an interface with its own mic pre's and control it for the control room. I think that's really cool. That's awesome. And one of the things I will say about Studio One that I love the most is the pipeline. Oh, yeah, Pipeline, right. Tell us about Pipeline. So Pipeline is basically a plugin which acts like an interconnection for your hardware. So basically, it can route one thing to another thing. So I can route from, let me see, let's look at my rack here. I can route from my LA2A all the way to my Pultec. It doesn't have to match the channel like
something specific, dog. It doesn't have to match the channels. So I could say channel 1, you can go to channel 16 and, route it back, and it could create a feedback loop so I can just run into that specific hardware. And you can save that as a preset. So whenever you want to bring it in, it automatically does the timing. It adjusts the latency and something else. I forgot the terminology, but it does all the adjustments for you automatically.
Right, like the round trip delay.
Yeah, the round trip delay. Yep.
Okay, so let me say this back and see if I'm understanding you right. So if you have an interface and it's got a bunch of extra, you got your inputs for your mic lines, but then you got a bunch of extras. Mm-hmm. You can use those extras to go to and from individual pieces of gear. And then you can use the pipeline plugin from within your mix to jet over to one of those other pieces of gear and back into your session. But are you saying that like you could have, if your 1176 is on its own back and forth run and you have an EQ on a different back and forth run, that within pipeline you can actually mix and match both of those together on one of your mix tracks?
I've done that several times.
That's pretty cool. That's something that's a first. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, groovy. PreSonus has everything you need for your music or podcast production. Studio One is a great choice for your DAW, whether you are writing songs, creating EDM and pop music, recording bands, mixing, mastering, composing for film, or recording voice and producing a podcast of your own. A flexible sketchpad, chord charts, key recognition, effects pedals, amp simulators, virtual instruments including a killer drum machine, built-in vocal tuning with Melodyne, and 37 fantastic sounding plugins for mixing will allow you to create whatever inspires you. PreSonus provides you everything you need for your studio, from microphone to digital interface to headphones and speakers, so that you can easily set up your home studio for professional production. Get started now with the low-cost Studio One Artist and join PreSonus Sphere for access to all their software, a complete learning library, and creative collaboration in the community at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. If your goal was to climb Mount Everest, you would hire a Sherpa to guide you to the summit. If you wanted to sail around the world, you would hire a seasoned sea captain for a safe voyage. And if you wanted to try skydiving, you wouldn't just jump out of an airplane without being strapped to an expert, right? So why would you send off your mix for mastering without knowing that it was ready first? Wouldn't it be great to have a professional mastering engineer with a trained ear to guide you through the final stages of mixing? Brian Murphy is your trusted guide at soundporter.com. Home of the iterative mastering process, where you get to interact with a professional mastering engineer who listens to what you want and will give you mix feedback to help you get your mix ready for mastering. Contact Brian now for a free mix review and mastering demo so that you can hear it before you buy it at soundporter.com. What else should I ask you about as far as, stuff you love about working in the computer and the DAW and, or Studio One or Pro Tools or whatever?
I've finally made the transition to 96K.
Oh yeah. So talk about why'd you make that transition, and what was it that prevented you from making that transition until just now?
Well, the power of computers have now stepped into a whole nother time continuum. And I realized with the advantages of M.2 SSDs in general, I remember having a conversation with Ken Lewis. Google him. That guy produced my favorite album. He recorded it. But he was telling me he recorded the SSDs. This was probably 10 years ago. And I'm like, you're recording the SSDs? Don't they have like a crash rate failure? They were new to the market. They were pretty expensive. He said, I've been doing that for a long time. I said, okay. So then I started recording the SSDs, and I realized that my DAW actually ran a whole lot, without any glitches, and everything caught up. So I used to throw 100 tracks, and there was no issues with the reading and writing to the SSD drive. So I just built a new computer, and I maxed out everything. And let me tell you, like, it just runs beautifully.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too. So speaking of another great sponsor on the show, OWC, I've been using their SSDs in my Mac Pro here. And I noticed just an immediate, it was like getting a new computer just by swapping out the hard drives. Well, they're not, sorry, technically they're not hard drives, they're SSDs. I had to learn that difference, you know?
Yep.
But I'll tell you one of the things that I noticed when I did put an SSD in for my audio drive and start, pulling up a session, sessions would play back faster. They could preload in Pro Tools HDX faster. And more importantly, if I was trying to comp vocals really fast, as fast as my fingers would go, the computer would keep up with me. Whereas before, the computer would be lagging behind a little bit. And, kind of like we were talking about with the MIDI, it's like you hit the button and it didn't do the thing you asked it to do. That would really piss you off.
Remember those dreaded DAE errors?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, those were the days.
Yeah.
Don't get those as much anymore. I'm surprised.
All right. So now are you using a Mac or did you switch to a PC?
I switched over to PC.
Talk about that transition, because I think for those of us in a Mac world, we always want to learn more about that.
Well, okay, so I was an ex-Apple employee many moons ago. And, I kept up with the technology. And I realized there comes a point of time where you get tired of being pigeonholed, if you get my drift. So I told myself, you know what, let me go ahead and make that switch. So had a computer custom built, and I just went with it and I installed it. I'm actually the one that put the operating system in there. I did my own thing, and then all of a sudden it just works. The thing for me is just turn on the computer, open up whatever I'm using, and just work. I just need to work. I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this question. Learning how to move around within a PC. I mean, everything to me about the computer, it's like you've got the software you're learning, and then you've got the operating system you're learning. And it's important to understand your operating system, because you have to understand, like, I don't have to understand everything under the hood, but I damn well need to know, like, where are my files going? How do I move this from this folder to that folder, back things up, duplicate, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Did you find that there was a steep, tough learning curve by going from Mac to PC, or did you find this isn't so hard, man? It's the same thing with a different name and a different label on it.
Exactly. That's where I'm at. I don't get caught up. I don't get caught up in the tech thing. It's like, is it going to do the work for me? What are the core differences? Okay. If I can figure that out, everything is the same, such as DAWs. I've learned every DAW has most of the same functionalities. Some are missing certain features. Some have other features that one doesn't have, but they're all the same thing. The whole thing is about capturing.
Yeah. And so even if you're on a PC, once you're inside your Pro Tools session, most of it feels about the same.
It's the same. Just one button off. Instead of the Apple key, you're pressing the control key, I think.
Right. I don't know why they flipped those two. They just I think that had to be like a Bill Gates versus Steve Jobs moment,
Right. Right.
Well, cool, man. All right. Well, that's encouraging. And then I've certainly heard people describe going to a PC as you can afford a much more powerful computer that way usually. Did you find that to be true?
Yes. Yes. I paid a whole lot less than I did having a Mac and keeping up with that Mac and everything. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you said it was a little bit DIY for you. Do you have any tips to people about whether they should try and figure it all out themselves, or don't waste your time with that? Just go get it from here or something like that?
Well, if you're taking what you're doing seriously, you build it yourself according to the specs that you want. Because this thing is going to be with you for however many years that you decide to keep it. And that was what I was going in when I was thinking, like, I don't care if there's the Intel Core 12, 13, 15, but what I have right now has to last me until I outgrow the limitations that's in that box.
When you say build it yourself, you mean literally like get the parts and screw them in together?
Yeah, I did.
All right, dig it. Here's another question for you. On your tracks that you shared with us that we got in the YouTube playlist, I think a bunch of the stuff if not almost all of it, is recent, right? So
yes, it is.
But yeah, you have these great covers on it, which look like an old record album, or they look like a VHS tape. Tell us a little bit about that process. How do you come up with these great covers and get this look to it that just looks combination of it's this year, but it looks vintage?
Right. So it's a small collective of us, and the person that created his tag is No Life. If you look for No Life with a KNOWLIFE, he's the one that creates those art. I just give him the vision, and he goes along and tries to, fulfill that thought process. And when I get the proof, I say, okay, now you can change this, add this element, remove that element, and then we just come up with the masterpiece that you see.
Awesome, man. I like it. And I like that you're describing working with a team too. So why don't we spin the question on that? Okay. What have you learned about working with teams of people? What things are going to be better when you're working with a team? What things should you just do yourself?
What I learned with a team is that it lifts a lot of weight off your shoulders, because it's not just you doing everything. That's one, but you also have to understand that people live different lifestyles. So like everyone is not local. One lives North Florida, one lives in California, another one lives in Europe, Canada. So we're all branched out, but we all try to come together and try to figure out something when it's time to get done.
All right, cool. And then how did you find your team? How did you find the people to work with?
I reached out. I'm the one who reached out, and I say, hey, I like your work. How would you like to, try to, we can build something together and just create. And if we make money from it, then we do. If not, we're just doing it for the love. But one thing I will say is that I'm very consistent, and I will continuously be consistent. So there's always going to be something to do. And as that goes along, if someone from the outside say, hey, who's the person that does this? I can always say, hey, this is my partner. This is what they do, what that person's doing, put you guys together, and you guys can build, another relationship outside of what we do inside our own.
Okay, that's cool. Entity. That's cool. And then let's ask a tough question, because you mentioned, if we make money on it, what do you want to say about how you make money today in music, or what advice do you want to give to everybody else for, where do opportunities come from? How do you make sure you don't miss on the opportunity if it does appear?
That's a great question. First thing I tell them is have your publishing together. That's the most important thing. Have some type of way where you can be tracked, where your art can be registered, where you can be found, and things of that nature. Like, that's something I stress out to a lot of artists. Have your paperwork done early before you even grab a tool and start, because that's what's your bread and butter at the end of the day.
Okay. And how do you, what are some ways that you keep your publishing together? I mean, you don't have to get too specific.
Right. No, I do everything myself. So it's like, okay, if this record is done, I'm like, okay, I make a list. This is the record. Who's the producer? Who mixed it? Artwork is done by. And now that everything is very accessible via a mobile app or a phone, you can just go right there and start plugging in the information that needs to be plugged in.
And are we talking about plugging it in on a place like DistroKid, or are we talking about like going to a BMI website and plugging in information?
I do both. I do the distributor, and I also do the publishing company itself.
Okay. But that in 2020, that kind of equals taking care of your publishing.
Right.
As far as like crossing your T's and dotting your I's, that's where you go do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing for me, honestly. That's one of the first rules I've learned, is to always have your paperwork in order. Because you never know what tomorrow may bring to you. You never know if you might get that call and be like, hey, we want to do X, Y, Z, and how are you going to be accounted for something that you're doing and you don't have that in order?
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then what else? I mean, how would you describe the life of a song as from sort of birth to, you waiting around to see if something happens? I mean, you've got the song idea, you got this group of people you're working with. Right.
The best thing that I've learned was, okay, I'll be honest with you, Lish. When I make these records, I make them for therapy. These are my personal therapeutic records. Then I go and share them with the world.
Yeah, remember, it's this therapy with you statements instead of I statements, right?
Right. I mean, they're therapeutic. I make these records for therapeutic reasons. When they release, if they do something, they do. If they don't, they don't. But I just love creating. That's the thing. I love creating, and I create in abundance. But say for instance, one record. What it was just word of mouth. Everything about me is word of mouth. Like I don't have like a complete budget and things of that nature and stuff like that. It was just like word of mouth. One person saw it, shared it with another person. Next thing you know, it went social and it did its round. You know, I don't know how the industry works because the industry is totally different. It is swarmed at this particular moment. But it's just what do you bring to the table as an individual to make you stand out?
Yeah, no, I like it and I agree. I think you have a really prolific creativity and it comes through. You know, your love of the music comes through on the production. And it's just a good reminder from you that it's like, let that flow naturally, do your thing, enjoy it. But just do these couple of things to make sure that you kind of like, you know, you wrap the bow on the package when you're done with each track so that it's there. And when, if something comes along, there's a breadcrumb trail back to you so that you can participate in the benefits.
You have summarized that so beautifully and eloquently, sir.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. The secret to a great mix is to start with great source tracks. And this means you need great microphones. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia brings you the new BB29 Signature Series microphone to help your recordings add clarity and detail to your mixes. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique Golden Drop capsule design with a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity without distracting colorations and distortions. The new BB29 microphone has a Class A discrete amplifier circuit, extremely low self-noise, and transformer-coupled output to bring an expensive sound to your studio for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. The legendary API sound can be described as punchy and bold with a distinct in-your-face presence. For more than 50 years, API Audio has been advancing their design of consoles, mic preamps, compressors, and EQs. But what API founder Saul Walker got perfect in the very beginning were the proprietary op-amp and transformer designs. And today, API still offers the very best for your studio with dedicated rack units for mic pre, EQ, and compression, and consoles from small to large with the Box 1608, 2448, or full-size legacy access, and they even introduced the original 500 series lunchbox to studios everywhere. But most importantly of all, no matter which gear you choose from API, you can count on the original op-amps and transformer designs to make sure you always get that legendary API sound. Because the next record you make could be your best record ever. Visit apiaudio.com. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. Okay, cool, man. Let's jump into some of the jam session back-end questions here.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of go through this batch because I think we got some time. When you started out in recording and producing and writing, what do you feel like was holding you back?
Oh, that's a great question. Fear of the unknown.
All right. What sort of things do you remember feeling like they were too unknown for you? Because a Sound Blaster card didn't bother you too much.
No, it didn't. But I suffer from anxiety, so it's just kind of wondering what's next. What's the next step? Do I have what it takes? Do the people like what I do? Do I provide a great service? Do they feel like I have what it takes to, further, take their career or take whatever their product is and bring it to the next level? So it's just fear of the unknown for me was my biggest one.
Did you figure out a good way to push through that?
Yeah. The thing I realized is people wanted to be around me and they feed off my energy. And something that I saw was, watching some motivational speeches, and it said, people don't pay you just to pay you. They pay you for your taste. They pay you for who you are. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So let me just embrace me, who I am, and share that with the world. And if they love it, they love it. If they don't, well, there's plenty others, but there's none as unique as me.
There you go. I like it, man. All right. So how about some of the best advice you remember receiving?
The best advice I ever got was emotions first, capture second, worry last.
All right. Dig it. So emotions first, capture second, worry last. When you say worry last, is that your way of saying we're really not ever supposed to get to the end because we shouldn't be worrying too much? Or should there be some worry in there?
Well, the word, if we're talking about a recording, let's just capture it. Let's capture what the emotions are right now.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the technical side, we'll worry about that last. Right now, let's focus on capturing whatever, that we need to capture.
Yeah. I like that. I think the best stuff we do follows that flow where it's like you start with the emotion, you start with the excitement, grab it. Because I'd rather have a bad iPhone photo of something incredible that happened than a really amazing photograph of something that was not all that interesting,
Exactly.
All right. How about sharing a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something the rock stars could use on their next session?
I was told the first finished take is usually the best take. So never delete it. Create a new playlist and continue, but keep that original take as a reference.
Even if you thought it was just a warm-up on the mic.
Right. You never know, because that raw take is usually where most of the emotions start. So then we go back to the emotions first, capture second. We'll worry about everything else later.
So I'm trying to think about where that happens for me, because certainly if I'm tracking a band, there are false starts. I guess that's what it is. So like more often than not, there might be a false start for the full band, or there might be a false start for the singer doing a vocal take. And I think the instinct is to, just go into record again and not forgetting that you're actually recording over that first line or something. And I've agreeing with you. I like to teach myself to make a new playlist. And even though they didn't sing a full top to bottom of the song, just at least keep that first line, because you might need, that might be the opening lyric, that you needed.
Yep. And sometimes you can just build off that screw up.
Yeah. Now, let me ask, so that reminds me of something else to ask you. In songwriting kind of stuff, in song situations in the studio, I feel like one of the great challenges is nailing the first lyric of the song. It's funny when you start paying attention. It's funny how often you notice that like happens, that people just don't settle in until the second line or something. Does that kind of challenge exist in doing hip hop and rap production?
Of course
it
does. Of course it does.
So how do you address that? What are some smart ways to get that right?
Formatting. It's all about the formatting, which is why I say this is how you approach the song, how you write the lyrics, because overdoing it will cause your brain to overload. Saying too many syllables will cause issues with breathing control. So it's all about formatting and practice. It's okay to practice even in the hip hop, in the hip hop rap setting, because as long as you practice and you get those lyrics down, when it's time to get it done, you can get it done ASAP.
Yeah. All right. There's another expression in the music, the song world that says, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus," Does that exist for hip hop production as well? Is there sort of an impatience to get to the payoff, or is the verse, rhythm often an immediate payoff?
Well, I would say the verse is the immediate payoff because, like I say, all depends on the record. If it's something that catapulted mainstream, I mean, that's a 1 in a billion chance.
Right.
You rush into it. But remember, you still have to listen to the lyrics before you get to the chorus. We all love the chorus because it's that little part that catches you. But then when you go back and listen to the verses, it's like, okay, I know the song, so I can sing along the whole song and get to the chorus and have fun and continue on with the rest of the song.
Yeah. Plus, if if the loop and the groove is so killer,
yeah.
If you're going for that Jay Dilla thing and you've just got this amazing pocket, I know that's enough for me to lose myself in it before the first word even happens.
Have you ever listened to a song where it's just the instrumental playing, the lyrics haven't kicked in yet, but you're so entranced in the instrumental part and you just like, oh, it can't get no better than this.
Yeah. And then the singer comes in and you're like, oh my, never mind. I mean, that must happen in hip hop too, because that definitely happens in the rest of, the band music happens. World. It's like you've got this great track, great band. And then if you don't like the singer, forget it.
Yep. It happens all the
time. All right. So how about a favorite hardware tool for the studio? I mean, you mentioned Machine. If you got anything more you want to talk about that, or if there's any other hardware you want to bring up.
Yeah, I could bring up 3 real quick. The Black Lion B172A. I love this unit.
Now, which one is that?
It's basically an 1176 on one side and a LA2A, on the other side, mashed into one hardware unit.
Sweet.
And it has a switch where you can toggle between if you want the 1176 has the first insert or the LA2A has the first insert. That's one. I love that unit. It sounds beautiful. It's actually my lead vocal chain when I'm recording or mixing records. The second piece that I love is the Stam SSL bus compressor, but mine has the gold cans inside of it, which is basically mimicking the authentic compressor, and it also has an API mod inside of it. So that's what actually helps a lot of the low end on my records. So it's a transformer button. I press that in and boom, the record just takes on a whole life of its own.
Okay. So you like to, we didn't get into this, we probably should. And I'm remiss for not asking you this, but you like to mix in the box, but leave and go through some of the analog gear as well.
I'm a hybrid mixer.
Yeah. All right. Take it.
Yeah. And the last piece I love is this Cranborn Audio 500R ADAT. All I wanted all my life was a 500 series with ADATs. Somebody created it, and it sounds flipping awesome.
So, hold up. So the Cranborn, so it's a 500 series module, like an API lunchbox kind of 500 series? But it has a ADAT light pipe?
It has ADAT light pipe all the way up to 96K, if I'm correct.
Oh, so does that mean you can use other stuff that has an ADAT light pipe output, and now you can get into... I'm confused about how you use it. How do you use it?
Okay, so I can... Oh, man, there's many ways you can use this. It can be a summing mixer. You can route your 500 series hardware pieces into it, and it's also an interface.
I'm still trying to picture it.
Mind blown.
It's a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah. So, okay. So imagine an API lunchbox.
Yeah.
You have all the racks filled, right?
Yeah. With what? Mic pre's or something?
I have 1176s, a chop shop, 2 SSL channel strip things, a DBX 560.
Okay. So processing like compressors and EQs. Yeah.
It's in a Serpent 1176 thing that has both the A and the F inside of it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so all the processors are inside this unit, but instead of you having to use only audio ins and outs, it has ADAT light pipes in the back. So those light pipes feed into my my Universal Audio Apollos.
I see. So it becomes that's cool. So like the whole thing where you're talking about doing pipeline from Studio One.
Yeah.
I was picturing a patch bay and analog patch cables patching to hardware out in the rack.
Oh.
But you're just like with this one light pipe, you've got these hardware units just on an insert ready to go straight in your DAW sessions.
Exactly. Yeah,
now
like
it's all coming together.
My patch bay here is empty. It's basically empty. It's empty. It's nothing. I just took all the cables out and I did direct insert patching.
Okay, cool. And then just, kind of, even though you're going digital to and from the hardware pieces of gear, you're finding that doesn't bother you. Like it sounds great and you're able to mix and match and dial in sounds that you love that way.
Right. Because I don't have to deal with conversion from the hardware itself, from the interface.
Yeah.
I just deal with the light pipe from this Cranbourne here. And let me tell you, the conversion in it sounds really, really good.
Now, if you wanted to use the lunchbox for analog ins and outs, do you have that as well? Or do you
Yes, it does.
You decide one way or the other?
It does. And you can bypass it too.
And the Cranbourne is the empty 500 box that you load up with modules? Okay, all right, cool.
Yes,
now I can picture it. Yeah, thanks for breaking that down. That's cool.
No problem.
Do you feel like the time you spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I know you're trying to make your best record ever. But when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then you're ready for UltimateMixingMasterclass.com. All right, so let's go to favorite software tools. Anything that you're excited about?
My DAW. Any DAW.
Which is whichever one you're using.
Whatever one is there, whichever one needs to be used. It's capturing. Yeah. My favorite part is capturing. Let's capture. Let's get that emotion.
Now,
that's what I'm looking for. Any
fun new plugins that you've been grooving on?
Not new per se, but my favorite one in the box has to be Acoustica Audio Nebula.
Okay, yeah. Well, a lot of people are swearing by Acoustica Audio. In fact, Mark Daniel Nelson on the show, he was talking about how now that he got the latest Mac Pro, the newest one that's just like insane, 16 core, he can actually run a bunch of them. Now with your PC, can you run a bunch of the Acoustica plugins if you want?
I sure can.
Wow. All right. That's another reason to think about that. So tell us about what is it? You said Nebula?
Yeah, Nebula is basically them sampling hardware, and you can use the hardware inside of your computer.
That's right.
So it's just and they make the skins that look exactly like the hardware, and let me tell you, it sounds 95 to 99% there.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna have to check out more Acoustica. Yeah, because I'm keep hearing it from people.
Yeah, Nebula 4.
But I might have to get a PC to do it.
No, you can run it on Mac also.
Yeah, I know, but I think on mine I can only run about one of them.
Nebula 4. No, Nebula 4 is not processor intensive like the Aqua series. The one you're speaking about is the Aqua series. Yeah, those can.
Yeah, like the yellow and the gold and stuff like that.
Yeah, those things will run your CPU into mulch. But yeah, the Nebula 4 is really, really good with CPU.
All right, dig it. I'll check out the Nebula 4 for sure. Any other plugins that you got excited about recently, or stuff that something maybe you always seem to use on your mixes?
Yeah, the like I said, those three pieces, the 172A, the SSL bus comp, and this Cranbourne, this ADAT piece. I mean, this ADAT piece is just like, why did it take so long for them to create it? And then the fact that it has the series, You can hook up all the modules. It has 96K support via the light pipe. So it has two ins and two outs on the back of it. And it can be its own summing mixer.
Oh, wow. So you can actually sum through it too.
You can sum through it also. And the headphone amp on these things are loud, super loud. So you can crank this thing and blow your eardrums if you choose to.
Yeah, which I probably choose to do that more often than I need to.
Oh, don't get us started with that one. Yeah, those are my pieces. Those are like desert island right there.
That's great. All right, then let's jump to the next one. And this might be an unfair question because you basically let us know that we talked about this, but any other resources for the business side of doing music if you want to do this for more than just a hobby? You got any tips for the rock stars?
Just I would just say find a what's the best word I can say? You'll create a little bubble around you, and you just continue feeding those people that support you. That's the best thing I can say.
All right, dig it. How about an organizational resource or tips for keeping all your shit together?
I'm a Google person, so Google Keep and Google Calendar are my two favorite apps.
Okay, I use Google Keep a lot too.
Yeah, I love it because it is I don't know what the heck. I say Google and it started talking.
That's funny.
So
that's great.
The thing is I like it because they're DAW agnostic. So they'll follow you to whatever operating system you use, whether you're on Android, you're on iOS, you're using a tablet, you're using a PC, you're using a Mac, and it syncs everything in real time. So those are why I love them.
I don't know which elements of all that you use, but Google Keep on my phone, one of the things that's kind of cool about it is you could doodle and sketch in it. You can do handwriting in it. You can type things out. But I use it to capture little lyrical phrases and words that I hear. And something about the way it lays it all out. If you don't put too much text in it, it makes it really look beautiful, like a little poster when you go back and look at it for song lyric ideas.
Yeah, that's what I use it for. I actually probably used up at least 20 gigabytes in Google Keep by itself. That's how I go crazy with ideas and things on there.
And what was the second one? You said Google Calendar or something?
Google Calendar.
Yeah. There you go. That's really funny.
Thank you, honey.
You know what's really funny is all the people who are going to be listening to this and it triggers their phone when they listen back to the podcast.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. Let's go for this one's kind of similar again to what you said about finding a group of people and get them together. But let's just the hypothetical question. Like if you needed to start with a simple setup, you needed to find people to make music with, and then you needed to somehow survive through that process. What tips would you give people for that? Okay, so if I had a simple setup I could take, it would be an Apollo, a laptop, my Focusrite. I have a Focusrite ISA1, and I love that because I use my SM7B a lot, and the SM7B requires a lot of gain. Yeah.
So the Focusrite gives it the proper gain that it needs. And it also has a digital output, which I run into my Apollo Twin if I need to head out. That would be like my desert island, key pieces. As far as meeting people, I mean, there are so many ways. I mean, the internet is so vast and so broad. You have, your normals, your Facebook, your Instagrams, your Twitters, and things of that nature. And if we're speaking local, I mean, well, due to Corona, all crap is messed up now.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean,
we'll be back.
Yeah, but I've gone to like the Guitar Centers, the Sam Ashes, the little pubs, local shows and things of that nature, and just conversed and met people and built relationships from there.
Yeah, and then as far as making ends meet, when people are like thinking about starting out on this. Maybe one way to ask it is it cool to pay your bills doing something that's not music related? And can you still move forward with your music during that process? Or do you really need to find a job that's specifically music?
I mean, right now with the way everything is a gig economy, I would say do a 50-50 until the love, until your profession becomes the everyday routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So next hypothetical question. This is our closing one, but we're going to take the Wayback Studio Machine. You go back, you find young Trakz, making music, getting ready to record your first single, Hood's Prodigy. And you give yourself one bit of advice and you say, listen, dude, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you give yourself if you could?
I will put my hands around my shoulder and I would say, unfortunately, Pat, you can't hide for long. People are going to notice you and your aura, and they will come to you because they want to feel that energy. And don't let your fears overtake anything. Like, just go for it. You got what it takes. You have it. You just have to keep pushing and keep striving. And trust me, everything that you've wanted to happen is going to slowly start happening. But also know to be humble and be modest and just let the energies flow.
That's great, man. I love it. And I really like what you said, that like, just know that what you want to happen will happen. You just got to stay on the path. Because that's true. And it's hard to know that at times.
Right.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the show with us, dude. I feel like we're signing off too soon. I just want to come on down to Miami and make a record with you. You know what I mean?
Hey, I'm always open, Lidge. The door is always open for you.
Well, much love and appreciation for you being here. Let the rock stars know how they can find more about you. Go listen to your music. Of course, we've got a playlist in the show notes as well. But where should they go check out all your great work?
Just type in KILLAH space TRAKZ, and you will find a whole lot about me that I don't wish to share, but it would just pop up there because for some reason I'm now a public figure. I don't know.
That's great, man. That's great. Well, dude, thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you in person, and hope you and your family stay well.
Thank you so much, Liz. I just want to tell everybody it was a pleasure being here, and rock on. Oh, yeah. Hey, well, let me point out, Rockstars, if you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, rsrockstars.com/FB, that'll take you there. But Killah Trakz is right there in the group with us. You're still posting great songs. So just reach out and say hello and introduce yourself. Let's start connecting there. All right, man. Yes. Cheers, dude. No problem. Cheers. Peace. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. OWC, Presonus, API Audio, Isotope, Soundporter Mastering, Jay-Z Microphones, and Spectra 1964. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.